welcome, Robert. Is your last name Bauge? Bauge?
Bauge. Bauge, yeah.
Bouge. Bouge.
Yeah.
So it's, wow. Is that European? Of course it
It
is.
is. So there's a mountain range over in France, which I haven't been, but I have a friend from Body Awake Yoga and who also practices energy work, who we kind
Uh-huh.
of came in. We've been on similar retreats, and she sent me a few years ago. She was over there visiting some of her family. She's French Canadian, and she said, "I'm in the
Yeah.
Bauge mountain range," and sent me a picture. I
Bauge
was like,
Mountain
"Oh, that's
Range.
where that is."
So is that part of the Alps?
I'm not as familiar.
No.
That's an upcoming summer trip is over to see the great cathedrals and go to those
Yeah.
parts.
Wow. Now, of course, we're going to go on a tangent whenever you say cathedrals. And we could do a few more conversations because Robert, you wrote to me about the Buddha's relics. And of
Mhm.
course, several years ago, I did a very crazy thing. I did the craziest experiment. And this was an inspiration. No one told me to do this. All I can say was the Buddha masters gave me such a momentum and inner way I couldn't but do something about it. And it was this. When I first encountered the Buddha's relics in Minneapolis, I wrote a paper about it because my life shifted. And not only mine, I saw people healing. And as a doctor, I thought, what is going on here? Okay. To me, it was all about medicine needs to have a window into this very unique level of medicine. I mean, it's the best way I can describe it. And of course, I write about it in Bridging Science and Spirit, which has Buddha, Shakyamuni Buddha, and my mentor, Bill Tiller, on the cover. And long story short, the inspiration was the Buddha's essence survives today. It's timeless in the form of these relics. Relics are, for people who are not familiar, and I'm from a Hindu tradition, Robert. I don't know anything about relics. So this was incredible for me to even give meaning to the word relic. But relics are essentially objects. They're objects that can be clothing, it can be a rosary, it can be item like a handkerchief or clothing, shoes. I mean, it's incredible what relics are, but they can also be part of the physical body, a tooth, a bone. And so Shakyamuni's relics are both. They're items, but they're also his body, and they were precious pearl-like objects. And this is remarkable because they contain the essence of his consciousness. And there is no brain there. There is no body present, like no body, no physical bone. And to me, that was like it turned me inside out and upside down. And so I wrote about it. And when the Buddha's relics were coming to my home in Los Angeles, how do you then carry this essence of Buddha when the relics are gone? And that's where I realized that Tiller's experiments is a way to carry the essence beyond the exhibition, to capture some of that. Capture is perhaps not the right word, but imprinting my device, and it's still imprinted after all these years. So enough said. So that's the sort of the preamble. So Robert, tell me what
Yeah.
you're doing.
So wonderful. So I'm in a similar place. As I was sharing with the newsletter, and love your book. I think I was delighted to read it and then reread parts of it just recently
Yeah.
to send that newsletter out. And so essentially that was the help that I'm looking for to bridge the gap as you and Dr. Tiller talk about in the fluctuations of consciousness on a daily basis, realizing that we're all going through during this time, right? Opportunities to up level our awareness and to connect more with source and to be more in our divine selves. what the challenge that I was facing is sometimes I'd be there and then sometimes I wouldn't be there. And then I'd be working with a client and then I'd be like having these highs and lows with my practice, practicing with other people and just trying to keep that consistent. So I have 3 IHDs that just arrived from the Tiller Foundation in the past week. I wanted to talk with you more about about the imprinting process, and you were so kind to answer those emails, because that is really where I think we could all use a little lift during this time when there's a lot of chaos in the world. There's lots of in my own life. There's been some changes, right, in
Yes.
and around my family and different health conditions and different what we call in energy work energetic interference, right? So we know from Dr. Hawkins' work, there's that which is loving and kind, and there's that which isn't loving and kind, and within ourselves and also outside on this third dimensional reality. So it's differentiating, I think, is getting a greater sense of differentiation and getting all the assistance that we possibly can in healing and fulfilling our own potential here at this time, as well as helping others do the same. So that's kind of
Robert, what's your you said healing. So are you yeah, describe your work.
so I've practiced energy medicine for 10
Mhm.
years. In coming up, I was a patient of bioenergetic synchronization technique, actually. To make a long story short and compress that, yeah, I was on a best table when I didn't even know what bioenergetic synchronization technique
Yes.
was. And the person who gave me my initial best session happened to be Dr. Hawkins' editor for 17 years.
Ah,
And so it was very powerful, needless to say. And I was in really dark time in that point in my life. And it was like, wow, there is something outside of the reality that I've been living in for a little bit. I was unfortunately involved in a cult for a little while, Scientology, and that led me down this path with a dark night of the soul, and because of which I'm thankful to say it allowed for me to bring a lot of other things up into the light, other habits and behaviors and patterns of thinking that weren't necessarily great for my health and expansion in consciousness. I kind of lost my way a little bit, but through the energy work, Dr. Sue Morter's work, and obviously Dr. Hawkins played a great deal through reading his books, Transcending the Levels of Consciousness and the Eye of the I and
yes.
Power versus Force and Letting Go and all those great
Oh
books.
my God, Dr. Hawkins is my hero. There are many, and I always see the great avatars, Master Jesus, Bhagavan Krishna, but Hawkins. And Robert, I'm getting goosebumps. The first time I opened just the Power versus Force, and I just come from London to Rochester, Minnesota, and I was starting my faculty at the Mayo Clinic, and I was very, very deeply interested because I knew that, chemical means to healing is very limited. I could see it, but yet that's what conventional education takes us in medical school. And but I'm of Hindu faith. I come from Kenya, so there was this thread always running through my life of spiritual inquiry. And so somebody told me, it was like a little hint. Look up David Hawkins. He's a doctor too. And so I looked up Power versus Force. I fell off my chair. I remember that day, midnight, I opened the book and I knew immediately the map of consciousness. When we say the word consciousness, Robert, they're levels. Yeah, we can have a consciousness of Dark night of the soul, we have the consciousness of Nisha Manek, which is intellect all the way. I have worshipped science, the scientific method. I've given my life to it, and it is limited. You have to go into the non-linear. Linear means do this, you get an outcome. Take 2 Tylenol and call me in the morning. That's
Yeah.
what I do all day. But now I have shifted my practice, like you said, to look at the realms of energy. It is energy that regulates all biochemical processes. No matter how many chemicals you put, unless you know that, you will always fall short. And so I've had a shift in my own mind from just not just chemistry, but looking at energy, which is subtle energy, which is where Tiller comes in. But we're, of course, talking about some of the basics, and I salute you for really looking at this whole thing. Oh, you know, I have to look at my addictions. And of my own willpower, I can't do anything. I have to immerse myself in looking at the imbalances in the body's energy fields, which are very real. And in my medical school, we dissect the body, we look at the heart and the muscles, we label everything in Latin, it's so fancy. And where are the energy channels, right?
Right. Yeah.
Unless we
Yeah.
see them and measure them and do all these fancy things, they do not exist, which is a big mistake.
Yeah, so that's where in the same way, because I was very in the intellect too, and from an engineering perspective, having gone to a military school and then gotten a degree in engineering, and then was pursuing the building of things
Yeah.
um, and then this happened, and then it was like, wow, there's more, because months before I had been to the doctor and gotten, hey, you're in perfect health. um,
Yes.
and so it was a really eye-opening experience to me, to the subtle domains and the realms of our own consciousness, and kind of the traces of where we've been and where we're going, and
Yes.
into meditation as well. So it was it was a great event. I'm very glad, in hindsight it happened, because it's like the universe was self-correcting, my soul was self-correcting, and then it was getting back into this, and then from that it was learning more about how the body's energy, the meridian systems work, and then the
Yes.
chakra systems, and then allowing that um, to be more connected with that energy system to guide the unfoldment. And
Yeah. Yeah,
yeah,
the acupuncture and chakra systems are our lifeline in a sense, because that's the elan vital of the whole body's health. And it is our connection to source, divine intelligence, divine source. So thank you for that, because I think for me, the map of consciousness showed me very, very clearly. It's like a chessboard, the game of life. You see all the players, and this one, and suddenly I could see the levels of consciousness. This one's the level of consciousness of intellect and NIH grants, and that's how they operate.
yeah,
Nisha's in the pond, a little bit. I do my thing and I try my best, and suddenly, when you see all the chess players and what their motivations are, the game was up. It was
yeah.
no
Well, that's
longer
what.
interesting, because we're always jostling for grants and papers and it's a race. And I thought, I don't want that. And here's the thing about the map of consciousness, and I think and then we'll go into the relics of Buddha, because you're right. We need a tool, we need a guide, that the ebbs and flows of consciousness become more stable, because we are waves on a great ocean, and we go in and out and in, and sometimes it's rough seas. But for me, the chess players, knowing them and seeing where their motivations lie, I wasn't interested in changing them.
Mhm.
It was fine. They're allowed to express what they are. you express and radiate your level of understanding, which is consciousness. Consciousness of, pride. We have a lot of pride in academia and, intellectual pursuits. But Hawkins took me beyond that and said, oh, there are other